The conference room buzzed with a low hum of chatter, a cacophony of ambitious voices and clinking coffee cups, as my gaze drifted towards my phone. Its screen, a small window into my immediate future, suddenly illuminated with an incoming call from Tyler. I murmured an excuse to my colleague, a hurried apology for the interruption, and slipped out of the room, leaving the animated discussions and the scent of stale coffee behind. The hallway, typically a quiet transition space, felt unusually vast, its polished floors reflecting the overhead lights in an endless, sterile sheen. I braced myself for the usual conversational dance, the perfunctory, "How's the trip going?" or the more direct, "When will you be home?" The predictable rhythm of a long-distance relationship, even one stretched thin by routine. But the moment Tyler's voice breached the silence, a cold, almost predatory smugness permeated the line, instantly dissolving my preconceived notions. "I'm divorcing you," he declared, his tone devoid of any discernible emotion, save for a chilling hint of triumph that made my blood run cold. Each word was a calculated strike, delivered with precision. "I've already sold the apartment, so you need to figure out where you're going to live. Enjoy that." For a timeless, agonizing moment, the air seemed to drain from my lungs. My world, which moments before had been firmly anchored, now spun wildly off its axis. The sheer, unmitigated audacity of it, the breathtaking lack of remorse, was almost laughable. A bitter, ironic laugh, perhaps, if I could have mustered the breath. My hand, which had been loosely holding the phone, tightened around the device until my knuckles turned white, the plastic digging into my palm as the full, horrifying weight of his words finally registered. "You sold the apartment." I managed to ask, my voice a miracle of calm in the face of the internal storm, each syllable carefully measured to betray no hint of the chaos raging within. "Yeah," he responded, a dry, dismissive chuckle crackling through the receiver. "Nicole and I need the money to set up our life together. She deserves better than a tiny place like that anyway." Nicole. The name, when spoken aloud by him, landed like a physical blow, even though the faint, lingering suspicion of someone else had been a dull ache in my chest for months. Tyler's increasingly late nights, his sudden, conveniently timed work trips that seemed to materialize out of thin air, and the ever-widening chasm that had opened between us. All of it had whispered of a third party, a silent intruder in the fragile ecosystem of our marriage. But to hear him utter her name so casually, with such an air of shared intimacy, as if I were the interloper in their perfectly curated life, ignited a scorching fire in my chest. A silent, burning rage, cold and precise, began to harden the edges of my shock. "Sounds good," I replied, the words emerging from my lips with an unnerving, almost chilling evenness. There was no conceivable way, not now, not ever, that I would grant him the perverse satisfaction of hearing me crack. My pride, brittle yet unyielding, stood as a barricade against the rising tide of despair. "My name is Amelia, and up until that earth-shattering phone call, I had genuinely believed I had married a man I could unequivocally trust. Tyler and I had navigated the tumultuous waters of life together for 6 long years. And while our journey hadn't always been a smooth, idyllic sail, there were squalls and quiet doldrums, moments of friction and strained silence. I had, at the core of my being, believed in the enduring strength of our partnership. We had poured our combined effort, our dreams, and a significant portion of our early salaries into buying our apartment, a cozy, sun-drenched two-bedroom in the heart of the bustling city. It was a place I had fallen head over heels in love with the very first time I stepped across its threshold. Its large windows offering a panoramic view of the cityscape, its layout exuding warmth and promise. It wasn't merely a collection of rooms and walls, it was more than just a home. It was, in my mind, a tangible symbol of everything we had painstakingly built together, a testament to our shared future, our enduring commitment, or at least, That's what I had naively believed. Looking back, with the harsh, unforgiving clarity of hindsight, the signs had been there all along, subtle yet insistent, like small, hairline cracks appearing in the very foundation of what I thought was an unshakable structure. Tyler's dismissive, almost cavalier attitude whenever I dared to broach the topic of our finances, his infuriating tendency to effortlessly brush off my legitimate concerns with a charming, practiced smile and a quick, distracting kiss, a gesture designed to disarm, to deflect, to silence. I had, in my blind faith and perhaps a touch of naivete, always attributed his unwavering confidence in these moments to a profound, intuitive understanding of what he was doing, an almost innate business acumen. Now, the cruel truth dawned on me with devastating clarity. His confidence didn't stem from competence. It originated from an insidious awareness of his ability to effortlessly manipulate me, to bend my perceptions to his will. The remainder of that day passed in a hazy, disorienting blur. I somehow managed to navigate through a series of client meetings, my body present, my head nodding at all the appropriate junctures, mouthing platitudes and industry jargon, while my mind, a frantic, untamed beast, raced at breakneck speed. Tyler, in his deluded arrogance, truly believed he had won, that he had masterminded the perfect coup. He thought he could, with a single, brutal phone call, yank the rug out from under me, divest himself of the home I had poured my heart and soul and considerable effort into, and then simply walk away, scot-free, unburdened by consequence or regret. But there was one crucial, meticulously overlooked detail, a small but monumental oversight, that he was utterly unaware of. The apartment deed, that undeniable proof of ownership, had been exclusively in my name for several months. I had orchestrated the transfer quietly, efficiently, after we had refinanced the property earlier in the year. It was a move Tyler had readily agreed to, his attention fleeting, his interest minimal, because it meant a marginally lower interest rate, a tangible, immediate benefit he could grasp. He had never once bothered to inquire about the intricate details of the process, nor had he deigned to read the stack of paperwork he had so carelessly, so blithely signed. His astounding carelessness, his colossal indifference to anything beyond his immediate gratification, was not merely a flaw, it was going to be his utter undoing. By the time I finally returned to the sterile confines of my hotel room that evening, the initial, bone-numbing shock that had paralyzed me earlier had slowly, almost imperceptibly, transformed into a cold, unwavering resolve. The raw, guttural urge to collapse into a heap of despair, to cry until my eyes were swollen and my throat raw, to beg for explanations or mercy, it had vanished, replaced by a steely determination. Tyler wanted a fight. Fine. He was going to get one. But this was a battle I was, without a shadow of a doubt, going to win. And I would win it not with tears or pleas, but with calculated precision and unwavering strength. The very first call I made, even before shedding my travel-worn clothes, was to Chloe, my lawyer and more importantly my longtime friend. As I spoke, the words flowed from me, detailing the entire excruciating situation in painstaking, methodical clarity. My voice miraculously remained steady, a calm exterior belying the frantic, accelerating beat of my pulse beneath my skin. He sold the apartment, Chloe repeated, her voice a blend of incredulity and dawning comprehension. Does he even realize that he can't possibly do that without your explicit consent? Apparently not, I said, a faint, almost imperceptible hint of amusement, dark and cynical, creeping into my tone. He seems to think he's already spent the money on setting up his fabulous new life with Nicole. Chloe let out a dry, mirthless laugh, a sound that conveyed both exasperation and a grim satisfaction. Well, he's in for a rather rude awakening, she stated, her voice hardening with professional certainty. The sale is not only invalid, but completely illegal. You have undeniable proof of sole ownership, and if he's taken any money from the buyer, even a single cent of a deposit, He's absolutely on the hook for fraud. Criminal fraud, Amelia. The word, fraud, resonated deep within me, sending a powerful, electrifying jolt of satisfaction through my entire being. It was not a vindictive joy, but rather a profound sense of justice beginning to stir. What do we need to do? I asked, my voice now laced with eager anticipation. First, Chloe outlined, her voice crisp and efficient, we'll immediately notify the buyer that the sale is entirely illegal and void. Then, we'll draft a formal, legally binding letter for Tyler, outlining in no uncertain terms the severe consequences of his actions. If he's foolish enough to try anything else, anything at all, we won't hesitate to take him straight to court. And trust me, Amelia, he won't like the outcome of that. As I finally hung up the phone, a strange, profound sense of calm, deep and unwavering, settled over me. It was a sensation akin to watching a raging storm pass, leaving behind a clear, quiet sky. Tyler, in his myopic arrogance, had truly believed he had outsmarted me, that he had rendered me utterly powerless and left me scrambling in the dust. But in a twist of delicious irony, he had, in reality, merely set himself up for the ultimate, most public humiliation. He had unwittingly handed me the very weapon I needed to dismantle his carefully constructed facade. I dedicated the remainder of my business trip to my work, pouring every ounce of my mental and emotional energy into the tasks at hand. I meticulously compartmentalized my emotions, pushing the raw pain of betrayal into a locked box within my mind, allowing only the cold, precise calculations of strategy to surface. The betrayal, sharp and lacerating as it was, undoubtedly hurt. But the intoxicating prospect of reclaiming my life, of watching Tyler's insufferable smugness crumble into dust, of turning his triumphant sneer into a mask of pure despair, ignited a profound sense of purpose within me, a potent, driving force I hadn't felt in months, perhaps even years. It was a purpose born not of bitterness, but of a fierce desire for self-preservation and justice. When I finally boarded the plane for my flight home, I was ready to confront Tyler, ready to systematically dismantle his elaborate web of lies, and, most importantly, ready to embark on a thrilling new chapter of my life, utterly unburdened by his toxic presence. This wasn't merely about winning a legal battle. It was about the profound act of taking back control of my narrative, my future, and my very soul. The hours of the flight home stretched out before me, an expansive canvas upon which my thoughts could unfurl, allowing me to meticulously trace the unraveling of everything I had once held dear. Tyler's arrogance, in retrospect, was truly astounding, breathtaking in its scope. He hadn't even attempted to conceal his betrayal, acting as though I were nothing more than a minor inconvenience. Another easily bulldozed obstacle on his self-serving path to unfettered freedom. But instead of spiraling into a maelstrom of anger, a useless, self-destructive emotion, I channeled my focus onto the actionable steps I would take the moment I landed. Tyler, in his distorted reality, saw me as utterly powerless, a mere pawn in his grand scheme. What he failed to grasp, what his monumental ego prevented him from seeing, was that I had, without even consciously realizing it, been playing a long, patient game, quietly laying the groundwork for my own inevitable resurgence. As the plane's wheels finally kissed the tarmac, a palpable jolt of adrenaline surged through me. My phone was in my hand before the seatbelt sign even flickered off. My first call was, of course, to Chloe. "I'm back," I said, my voice crisp and invigorated as I expertly wrestled my suitcase off the luggage carousel. The familiar hum of the airport terminal a distant drone. "What's the next step?" "We've already notified the buyer," she replied, her tone brisk and remarkably efficient, reflecting her characteristic no-nonsense approach. They were, to put it mildly, shocked, and certainly not happy with Tyler. The good news is, they're more than willing to cooperate fully, which significantly strengthens our case against him. She paused, then continued, "And Tyler, I sent the formal letter to his email this morning, Chloe confirmed. It meticulously outlines the illegality of the sale, your undeniable sole ownership of the apartment, and the severe potential consequences of fraud. He hasn't responded yet, which isn't surprising, but if I had to guess, he's probably in a furious, sputtering rage right now. Good, I thought, a small, grim smile playing on my lips. Let him stew. Let the realization of his monumental error slowly, agonizingly sink in. When my taxi finally pulled up to the familiar curb of our building, the apartment was eerily quiet. A silence so profound it felt like a living entity pressing in on me. Tyler's things were still scattered about, a testament to his hasty departure and presumed swift returns. His worn leather jacket draped carelessly over the back of the armchair in the living room, his favorite pair of sneakers haphazardly tossed by the entryway, a subtle disarray that screamed his presence. Yet, despite these physical remnants, the place felt fundamentally different, as if the very energy within its walls had irrevocably shifted, cleansed by an unseen force. I took a deep, fortifying breath, inhaling the changed atmosphere, and slowly, deliberately, set my suitcase down, a quiet understanding settling over me. The confrontation was coming soon enough, and I was ready. Sure enough, Tyler came storming in that evening, the front door slamming shut with a resounding thud that echoed through the quiet apartment. His face was a mask of livid red, contorted with a barely contained fury, and his phone was clutched in his hand, looking dangerously close to being crushed. "What the hell is this?" he bellowed, his voice raw with outrage. Waving the formal letter Chloe had sent, its crisp paper crinkling in his trembling grip. "You're telling me I can't sell the apartment? It's half mine?" "No, Tyler," I said, my voice an oasis of calm in the storm of his rage, as I deliberately crossed my arms over my chest, a small gesture of defiance. "It's not. The deed has been exclusively in my name for months now. You can't sell something you don't legally own." He froze mid-stride, his enraged expression morphing into a grotesque tableau of confusion and pure, unadulterated rage. His jaw slackened slightly, eyes wide with disbelief. "What are you talking about?" he demanded, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper, laced with a nascent fear. I moved with deliberate grace, walking over to the small file cabinet in the corner of the living room. I pulled out the original deed, its formal script and official stamps a stark contrast to his blustering denials, and held it up for him to see, for him to comprehend the irrefutable truth. After we refinanced earlier this year, I had the deed transferred solely to my name. You signed off on it, remember? Or did you just skim the paperwork like you always do, too busy to be bothered with the mundane details? For a long, agonizing moment, he remained silent, his eyes scanning the document, his face slowly draining of color as the truth seeped in. Then his expression twisted into a venomous sneer, a pathetic attempt to regain some semblance of control. "You think you're so smart, don't you?" he spat, his voice laced with contempt. "This doesn't change anything. I already made a deal, and you're going to look like a complete fool when it all falls apart." I met his gaze, unblinking, my own resolve a solid, unyielding wall. "The sale is already void, Tyler," I stated, each word a hammer blow of truth. "The buyer knows it, and they are more than ready to take legal action if you don't return their money immediately." I took a deliberate step closer, lowering my voice, allowing a chilling edge to seep into my tone. "Oh, and speaking of money, if you've spent a single cent of that deposit, you're in even bigger trouble. Much bigger trouble, Tyler." For the very first time, the veneer of Tyler's arrogance wavered. Cracking under the weight of my quiet certainty, he shifted his weight, his eyes darting away from mine, unable to meet their steady gaze. "You don't know what you're talking about," he muttered, the conviction in his voice thin and fragile. "Oh, I know exactly what I'm talking about," I countered, my voice steady, unwavering. "You've spent years treating me like I'm too naive, too simple to notice what you're doing, too trusting to see your machinations. But guess what, Tyler? I've been paying attention. And now, you're going to deal with the full, unvarnished consequences of your actions. He began to pace, a caged animal, his frustration mounting with every step, his controlled fury giving way to panicked agitation. This is ridiculous! You're blowing everything out of proportion. You can't just kick me out of here! This is my home. I raised an eyebrow, a small, subtle gesture that conveyed a world of meaning. Actually, I can. This apartment is legally unequivocally mine. You can stay here for now, but only because I'm affording you the courtesy of time to figure out your next move, to find somewhere else to land. But let me be absolutely clear, I'm not going anywhere. This is my home, and I am here to stay. Over the next few days, Tyler's initial, blustering anger slowly, excruciatingly, morphed into a desperate, frantic state. His phone calls became relentless. His voicemails a chaotic symphony of alternating pleas and hollow threats. One moment he would be begging, his voice cracking with feigned remorse. The next he would be menacing, his tone laced with futile aggression. He tried every tactic, every manipulation he had ever used on me, each one falling flat against my newfound resolve. Meanwhile, Chloe, my steadfast ally, worked tirelessly behind the scenes, a whirlwind of legal efficiency, ensuring that every loose end was meticulously tied up, every legal avenue explored and secured. The buyer, now seething with rage at Tyler for having so brazenly wasted their precious time and hard-earned money, swiftly rescinded the agreement, making it undeniably clear they wanted nothing further to do with him. Concurrently, Chloe drafted the preliminary paperwork for the divorce proceedings, a stark, undeniable symbol of the beginning of the end. You're in an excellent position, Amelia, Chloe assured me during one of our regular updates, her voice radiating an unwavering confidence that was infectious. Tyler has absolutely no leverage here, between the voided sale and the very real fraud charges hanging precariously over his head. He'll have no choice but to cooperate fully if he wants to avoid a much, much bigger, far more public mess. He's cornered, and he knows it. Her words were an immense relief, a soothing balm to the persistent ache of the past few weeks. But they also served as a potent, piercing reminder of just how much I had, for far too long, allowed Tyler to control and diminish my life. For years, I had quietly, stubbornly ignored his casual dismissiveness, his breathtaking arrogance, his subtle but persistent belittling. I had rationalized it away, telling myself it simply wasn't worth the fight, that maintaining peace was more important than standing up for myself. But now, with the clarity of a freshly scrubbed window, I saw with agonizing precision just how much of myself I had been silently, irrevocably giving up. And I was now fiercely, unequivocally determined to take it all back. Every single piece. Lauren, my very best friend, a beacon of unwavering support, came over one evening to help me undertake the Herculean task of reorganizing the apartment. Her presence was a comforting anchor in the shifting sands of my new reality. Together, we systematically boxed up Tyler's belongings, each item a small, tactile memory of a life now irrevocably past, carefully stacking the boxes in a neat, clinical pile in the corner of the living room, a monument to a defunct relationship. "How's he taking all this?" she asked, a mischievous smirk playing on her lips as she held up one of his particularly gaudy ties, a relic of his questionable fashion sense. "Not well," I said, a genuine laugh bubbling up from deep within me, despite the lingering ache of the situation. He's still convinced he can talk his way out of it, still trying to manipulate. But I'm not budging. Not an inch. "Good," she declared, tossing the offending tie into a box with a satisfying thud. "He doesn't deserve a single inch of your space, Amelia, or a single second of your precious time." I nodded, feeling a profound wave of gratitude wash over me, a warm, comforting embrace. For so long, I had felt utterly alone in my marriage, shouldering the crushing weight of the emotional and financial burden while Tyler, with infuriating ease, took all the credit, all the accolades, all the rewards. But now I had people in my corner, people who genuinely cared, who believed in me, who would fight alongside me. And that, I realized with a surge of quiet power, made all the difference in the world. The final, climactic piece of my carefully orchestrated plan clicked into place with chilling precision on the day Tyler, with astounding audacity, decided to bring Nicole directly to the apartment. I was sitting at the dining table, absorbed in reviewing some intricate paperwork. The mundane task a stark contrast to the drama about to unfold, when they sauntered in, as if they were royalty surveying their new domain, an air of unshakable ownership about them. Nicole surveyed the apartment with a self-satisfied, smug smile, her arm intimately looped through Tyler's, a possessive gesture that made my stomach churn. "So this is where we're staying," she purred, her voice dripping with an insufferable sense of entitlement, the words grating on my nerves. I slowly, deliberately, stood up, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs, a drumbeat of anticipation. But my resolve, forged in the crucible of betrayal, remained utterly unshaken. "No," I stated, my voice firm and clear, each word carrying the weight of absolute authority. "This is where Tyler's was staying. You, Nicole, won't be staying here at all. Not now, not ever." Her smug smile faltered, dissolving into a mask of bewilderment. She glanced quickly at Tyler, who looked equally stunned, his face a canvas of disbelief. "What is this?" he demanded, his voice a bewildered growl, completely caught off guard. "This," I said, my hand sweeping a slow, deliberate gesture around the apartment, encompassing every room, every inch of space, "is my home. Not yours, Tyler. Not hers, Nicole. And certainly not some convenient hotel for you two to shack up in after you so casually, so viciously, stabbed me in the back." Nicole's expression hardened, turning icy, but for once she remained silent, her composure cracking, but her words failing her. Tyler, on the other hand, looked like a pressure cooker on the verge of exploding, his face contorting with rage and a dawning sense of panic. "You can't do this!" he shouted, his voice desperate. "You're being unreasonable."
"Amelia, this is insane."
I met his gaze, unflinching, unyielding. "No, Tyler. What's truly unreasonable is you thinking you could sell my home, walk away with the money, and expect me to simply roll over and accept my fate like some docile lamb. You're lucky I haven't filed criminal charges for fraud. For now." The subtle implication hung in the air, a sword of Damocles suspended precariously above his head. Tyler stood frozen in the doorway, his face a vivid crimson with frustration and disbelief, while Nicole, her arms now tightly crossed over her chest, looked increasingly uncomfortable, her gaze darting between us, clearly sensing the seismic shift in power dynamics. "You're being ridiculous, Amelia," he repeated, his voice now laced with a desperate, pathetic plea. "You can't just kick me out of my own home." I took a deliberate step forward, closing the distance between us, my voice calm but imbued with an unwavering authority that left no room for doubt. "This is my home, Tyler. The deed has been in my name for months, and you know that. You signed the paperwork without even bothering to read it, just like you always do, trusting blindly, carelessly, assuming control. So no, this isn't your home anymore. It hasn't been for a long time." Nicole glanced at Tyler, her perfectly manicured hand tightening around her purse strap, a nervous tick. "Wait, what's she talking about?" she asked, her tone sharp, a dangerous edge of suspicion creeping into her voice. "You said this was your apartment, that you sold it." "You told me you had the money!" He flinched, trying desperately to wave her off, to silence her. "It's complicated, Nicole. I'll handle it. Just let me explain." "Oh, it's not complicated at all," I interjected, stepping even closer, my voice clear and cutting through his flimsy excuse. "Tyler tried to sell an apartment that doesn't legally belong to him. That sale, Nicole, is void, completely. And as of right now, he doesn't have a single leg to stand on. Nicole's composure, which had been so carefully constructed, finally cracked. Her mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air, her eyes wide with dawning horror. You mean the money you told me you had? She stopped mid-sentence, her voice rising in disbelief. Oh my God, did you lie about that too? Nicole, let me explain. Tyler stammered quickly, holding his hands up in a placating gesture, a desperate attempt to salvage his rapidly crumbling narrative. But she wasn't having it. No, I said, cutting him off, my gaze fixed firmly on Nicole. Let me explain. I took a deep breath, delivering the unvarnished truth with brutal efficiency. Tyler tried to sell the apartment behind my back, thinking he could pocket the money and leave me with absolutely nothing. What he didn't know, because he was too arrogant to read the documents he signed, is that I had the deed transferred solely to my name months ago. So not only did he utterly fail to sell it, but he also committed fraud by falsely pretending he had the legal right to do so. Nicole's mouth opened and closed again, her face pale with shock. Fraud, she whispered, taking an instinctive step away from him, as if he were suddenly toxic. Are you serious? Less? Fraud, I confirmed, crossing my arms, my stance resolute. And I'm prepared to press criminal charges if he doesn't get his things and leave this apartment by the end of the day. No exceptions. Tyler's carefully maintained facade finally, irrevocably, cracked. The anger drained from his face, replaced by a raw, naked pleading. You can't do this, Amelia, he said, his voice now a desperate whimper. We've been together for 6 years. You can't just throw me out. You threw me out the moment you made that phone call. I retorted, my voice hardening, devoid of any sympathy. You told me you were divorcing me, and then you laughed about me having to find a new place to live. You didn't just betray me, Tyler. You tried to ruin me, to leave me homeless and penniless. So don't you dare stand there and act like you're the victim here. Nicole took another step back, her eyes darting between us, a mixture of disgust and fear clouding her face. This is insane, she muttered, clutching her purse tighter, as if it were a lifeline. You didn't tell me any of this, Tyler! You said you had everything handled? He turned to her, desperation etched all over his face, reaching out a hand. Nicole, I can fix this. I swear, I just need. She cut him off with a raised hand, her voice sharp and final. Don't. Just don't. I'm not getting dragged into your mess, Tyler. Not for a second longer. Without another word, she turned on her heel and stormed out, the door slamming shut behind her with a definitive thud, leaving him standing there alone. Stunned, I couldn't help but smile, a small, triumphant curve of my lips, as the door clicked shut, the sound a sweet, liberating symphony. Looks like you're on your own, Tyler, I said, turning back to face him, my voice calm, almost conversational. Now, let's talk about what happens next. He slumped onto the couch, burying his face in his hands, his entire posture conveying utter defeat. Amelia, please, he mumbled, his voice muffled. I screwed up. I know that. But you don't have to do this. We can still. You're right, I said, cutting him off, grabbing a crisp folder from the kitchen counter and setting it deliberately on the coffee table in front of him. I don't have to do this, but I'm going to. This, I tapped the folder, is the divorce paperwork. My lawyer has already drafted it, and I strongly suggest you sign it quickly and without fuss. The sooner you do, the sooner we can both move on with our lives. He stared at the folder, his face pale and drawn, a defeated ghost of his former arrogant self. You really hate me that much? Hate you. I let out a short, bitter laugh, a sound devoid of mirth. No, Tyler, I don't hate you. I feel sorry for you. Truly. You had everything, someone who loved you, a home we built together, a future within your grasp, and you threw it all away. Not for love, not for passion, but because you couldn't see past your own monumental ego, your insatiable greed. Your need for control? I stood, my heart still pounding, but my resolve as solid as bedrock. I want you out of here by the end of the day. Take your things. Figure out where you're going to stay. This is the absolute last time I'm extending you any grace, any courtesy. He opened his mouth, as if to argue, but the words died on his lips. His shoulders slumped in total defeat, the fight draining out of him. Fine, he muttered, his voice barely audible. I'll go. Good, I said, walking towards the door, ready to end this charade. And don't even think about trying anything else, any last-ditch attempts at manipulation. Chloe's already handling everything, every legal angle covered, every potential loophole sealed. And the next time you cross a line, Tyler, the next time you try anything, I won't hesitate to let the courts handle it. And believe me, they will not be as lenient as I have been. As I opened the door, a final, definitive gesture, Tyler slowly, reluctantly, stood, grabbing his coat from the back of the couch. He didn't look at me as he walked out, his footsteps heavy and shuffling, weighted with the crushing burden of his undeniable defeat. For a fleeting moment, a sharp pang of sadness pierced me, not for him, but for the life we could have had, the potential future that had been carelessly squandered. If only he had been the man I had so desperately believed him to be. But that moment passed quickly, replaced by an overwhelming, exhilarating sense of relief. I closed the door behind him, the click of the lock echoing like a triumphant drumbeat, and secured it firmly with the new key I'd had made earlier that week, a small, tangible symbol of my renewed sovereignty. This was my home now, truly and irrevocably mine, and no one, especially not Tyler, would ever take it away from me again. The silence that enveloped the apartment after Tyler left was deafening, yet profoundly liberating. It wasn't an empty silence, but one pregnant with possibility. For the very first time in years, I felt as though I could finally breathe, deeply and freely, without the suffocating weight of his presence, his insidious entitlement, or his carefully constructed lies pressing down on me. The space no longer felt heavy, burdened by his lingering energy. It was just me, the home I had built and fought so hard to reclaim, and the quiet, profound realization that I had won not merely against him, but against every lingering doubt I had ever harbored about my own strength, about my right to stand up for myself, about my own inherent worth. I stood in the middle of the living room, slowly turning, taking in the emptiness where his things had once been. His oversized, garish gaming chair, an eyesore I had tolerated for far too long, was gone. The framed jerseys, which had cluttered the walls and proclaimed his childish allegiances, had vanished. The gaudy, glass-top coffee table he had insisted on keeping, despite my repeated protests, was also gone. The apartment looked cleaner, brighter, infused with a lightness it hadn't possessed in years, like it was finally truly mine again, breathing a sigh of relief. Lauren came by that evening, a welcome burst of vibrant energy, armed with delicious takeout and a celebratory bottle of my favorite wine. "Is he really, truly gone?" she asked, flopping down onto the couch with a dramatic sigh, her eyes wide with a mixture of disbelief and satisfaction. "Gone and not coming back," I confirmed, pouring 2 generous glasses of wine, the clinking of the bottles a joyful sound. I gave him until the end of the day to pack his things. He didn't argue. He knew it was over. Lauren raised her glass, her eyes sparkling with unadulterated joy. "To fresh starts," she declared, her voice imbued with a celebratory gravitas and well-deserved victories. I clinked my glass against hers, the sound a delicate chime. I felt the immense, oppressive weight of the past week, indeed the past years, slowly lifting from my shoulders, leaving behind a profound sense of lightness. And, I added, meeting her gaze, to never letting someone walk all over me again. Over the next few days, I began the meticulous process of reclaiming the apartment, piece by painstaking piece, infusing it with my own essence. I rearranged the furniture, moving cherished pieces into new, more prominent positions. I carefully hung my favorite artwork in the living room, creating a gallery of personal beauty, and filled the once stifling space with things that genuinely brought me happiness, things that sparked joy and contentment. It wasn't just about redecorating, it was a deeply personal, transformative act. It was about turning the apartment into a vivid, authentic reflection of who I was, not the diminished, constrained person Tyler had tried so desperately to make me. It was about reclaiming my identity through my environment. Chloe called with regular updates on the legal proceedings, her voice filled with the kind of calm, unshakable confidence that made me feel utterly invincible, as if I had an impenetrable shield around me. The fraud charges are off the table, she explained, since the buyer ultimately decided not to pursue them, preferring to simply get their money back and move on. But the divorce paperwork is moving along smoothly and efficiently. Once Tyler signs, you'll be officially legally free. Hearing the word, free, made my chest tighten, not with anxiety, but with a profound, emotional resonance. It wasn't just about the dissolution of a marriage. It was about releasing the immense burden of everything I had been silently carrying for years. The simmering resentment, the insidious self-doubt that had gnawed at my confidence. The crushing feeling of being trapped in a marriage that didn't truly value or see me. It was all finally, irrevocably, being lifted. It was like shedding an impossibly heavy skin, revealing a vibrant, renewed self underneath. Tyler tried to reach out a few times, his messages a pathetic, desperate array that ranged from half-hearted, insincere apologies to transparent attempts to guilt me into reconciling, into giving him another chance. I made a mistake, Amelia. One read, an almost laughable understatement of his monumental transgression. Can't we at least talk about this? Please. Another was more desperate, more self-pitying. You're going to ruin me, Amelia. Is that what you want? Is that what you truly want? I didn't reply. Not a single word. For once, I refused to waste a single ounce of my precious energy, my newfound clarity, trying to fix something that was irrevocably broken beyond any hope of repair. He had made his choices clear and deliberate, and now he was finally dealing with the full, unmitigated consequences of those choices. My responsibility to him was over. By the end of the week, the apartment felt like a completely new space, vibrant and alive. It was warm, profoundly inviting, and unequivocally, gloriously mine. As I sat curled up on the couch one evening, a steaming cup of herbal tea cradled in my hands, the city lights twinkling like 1,000 scattered diamonds outside my window, I allowed myself to reflect on everything that had happened. Tyler's betrayal had been a seismic shock, a devastating blow that had shattered my world. But, paradoxically, it had also been the most brutal, yet necessary, wake-up call I could have ever received. For far too long, I had allowed myself to believe, to internalize, that I didn't deserve better, that I had to simply settle for whatever meager scraps of respect and love he deigned to throw my way. But now, I knew better. I wasn't just reclaiming my apartment. I was reclaiming my entire life, redefining its boundaries and its potential. A month later, my life looked completely, exhilaratingly different. The apartment, while physically similar, was utterly unrecognizable in its essence, not because of any drastic renovations, but because of how it felt. It was a living, breathing space that authentically reflected me, my tastes, my personality, my newfound independence and strength. The utter absence of Tyler's clutter, his oppressive energy, and his overbearing presence made the home feel lighter, freer, as if a great weight had been lifted from its very foundations. The divorce proceedings, thanks to Chloe's meticulous precision, continued to move along smoothly. She had handled every detail with expert care, ensuring Tyler had absolutely no room to argue, to equivocate, or to complicate the process any further. He signed the final papers without much fuss, likely realizing, in his pragmatic, self-serving way, that he truly had no leverage left to exploit. There was no grand, dramatic showdown, no emotional plea to work things out, no last-ditch attempt at reconciliation. Just a cold, clean break that felt both bittersweet in its finality and deeply, profoundly satisfying in its resolution. One quiet afternoon, as I sorted through some old dusty papers, a nostalgic task, I stumbled upon a forgotten photo of Tyler and me from our early years together. We were smiling, arms wrapped around each other, radiating the naive hope and boundless promise of youth. I stared at it for a moment, allowing the rush of memories, both good and bad, to wash over me. There had been good times, moments when I truly, wholeheartedly believed we were building something beautiful, something enduring together. But those moments, those fragile, fleeting glimpses of happiness, were long gone, irrevocably overshadowed by years of subtle neglect, insidious manipulation, and culminating betrayal. I gently tucked the photo into an envelope and put it away in a drawer, a private archive of a past that no longer defined me. It wasn't worth keeping out in the open, a constant reminder, but I wasn't quite ready to throw it away either. It was a part of my history, a chapter of my life, but it certainly didn't dictate my present or my future. Lauren and I celebrated the finalized divorce with a celebratory dinner and drinks at a trendy rooftop bar downtown, the city lights shimmering below us like a cosmic tapestry. "You're glowing, Amelia," she said, raising her perfectly crafted cocktail in a toast, her smile wide and genuine. "Single life truly suits you." I laughed, a genuine, unburdened laugh, feeling a warmth radiate through me that I hadn't felt in years, a deep sense of contentment. "It's not just the single life, Lauren," I clarified, my eyes sparkling. "It's the freedom, the absolute, unadulterated freedom. For the very first time in a very long time, I don't feel like I'm living under someone else's rules, someone else's expectations. I'm finally living on my own terms." We clinked our glasses, the sound a beautiful, resonant chime, and as the night wore on, filled with laughter and heartfelt conversation, I felt a growing sense of immense pride swelling within me. I had faced one of the hardest, most devastating moments of my life, endured its trials, and emerged not merely surviving, but stronger, more resilient, and utterly thriving. Back at home, invigorated by the celebration, I immediately started planning for the future, not just next week, but years down the line. The apartment, now so completely and utterly mine, had become more than just a refuge. It was a powerful, tangible symbol of everything I had reclaimed, every piece of myself I had fought to win back. But I knew, with a quiet certainty, that I wouldn't stay there forever. Someday, in the not-too-distant future, I would move to a brand new place, one completely free from any lingering shadows or echoes of my life with Tyler. Until then, however, I was fiercely determined to make the absolute most of every single moment in the space I had fought so hard to keep, to infuse it with joy, with purpose, with my own unique spirit. As I curled up on the couch that night, the silence of the apartment no longer deafening, but soothing, a profound sense of peace washed over me, enveloping me in a warm embrace. I thought about how Tyler had laughed during that phone call, so supremely certain that he had won, that he had reduced me to nothing, and I couldn't help but smile, a soft, knowing smile. His arrogant overconfidence had been his ultimate downfall, his fatal flaw, and my quiet strength, my unwavering resolve, had been my salvation, my path to reclaiming my life. This wasn't merely the bitter end of a marriage, it was the exhilarating, hopeful beginning of a brand new chapter, one where I, and only I, called the shots, one where I chose happiness definitively and without compromise on my own terms. And after a long, arduous journey, I finally, truly felt free.